push to talk. Guess it worked. Okay. Sweet. Okay. All right, everybody. Phil, are you on right now? Yes, I see you. You said you wanted to start kind of with some discussion of some things. Wanted to bring.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Great.
Yeah, I just wanted to share a couple things that I've been thinking about in regards to the starfish. I know with the price of Nexus being so low, things have kind of slowed down a bit, but I just wanted to remind all the ambassadors that even though we're all volunteers and we might not be earning money, it doesn't mean that we're not earning something, because by being in the starfish, we're actually all building trust, and trust is a very valuable commodity. In some cases, it's more valuable than money, especially when it comes to Nexus, because if we want people to use our technology, they have to trust us, and they have to trust the technology and trust the people behind the technology. The past year, even though our community has remained relatively small, we've been able to identify who the trustworthy people are, and I think we can credit that to the design of the starfish. It has a way of exposing people's true personalities, whether it's good or bad. So, and the whole idea behind transparency in starfish, originally I thought it was so that we didn't have to trust each other, we could verify. That's not entirely true. The transparency allows us to build verifiable trust, and that trust is important if we want to have synergy within our groups, right? We can't work together if we're suspicious of each other all the time. So I think it's important that we need to build that trust. And once Nexus gains usability, I think the technology will basically sell itself. And when that time comes, I think a lot of new people will want to join the community, and they might want to join the starfish as well. So it's good that we know who the trustworthy people are, because these new people might not be trustworthy. So we want to have the trustworthy people at the center of the starfish so they can hopefully direct the technology to make sure it's being used to benefit society. And Colin has mentioned wanting to decentralize the face of Nexus. And if you think about who that would be, it would have to be us. I can't really think of anyone else that would do it. If you think about who the face of crypto is now, it's people like Elon or Vitalik or CZ. And we don't want people like that becoming the face of Nexus. So if we want to prevent that, then that means we have to step up. And being a face means, publicly speaking, and to speak well, you have to practice. And I personally, I have a huge fear of public speaking, so that's kind of the reason why I'm speaking now, because it's just a practice in front of a small audience. Because at some point we might have to present ourselves in front of the entire world. So if we want to do that, we have to be ready and we have to practice. So I encourage all the ambassadors and developers, if they have anything to share, they can do it publicly, maybe in these AMAs. I'm sure Colin wouldn't mind. And what was I going to say? Oh yeah, if there's anyone from the community, if you consider yourself to be a decentralization maximalist and you haven't joined the starfish, but you have a desire to help society, then I think you should join now, because I think with 5.1 right around the corner, we're going to start building some momentum next year. So if you want to join the starfish, I think now's the time.
Thanks for bringing that up, Phil. And decentralization is it's important for everybody to step up. What I've noticed, it's kind of interesting. Because part of what we're building the system for is a means to create alternative systems that will allow us to essentially have the same quality of life, but without, all of these control mechanisms built into it. So, you can develop a digital currency instead of a central bank digital currency. You can build a sovereign digital identity system instead of a social credit score. You can build a trust score instead of a social credit score. You can remain pseudo-anonymous instead of, being in this registered data bank with a kill switch that can just turn off your life, right? Which is what was really happening right now. If anybody's seen what's happening in China, watch China and you'll see what's coming to the rest of the world. They've got COVID passports with the red, yellow, and green, where if you go yellow, then you're locked out of your apartment. You can't buy food. You're essentially, living in a tent on the side of the street and begging for food. And if you get a red, then you are now in a concentration camp. And there are those everywhere, COVID concentration camps, right? So, life, I guess you could say society in itself, I don't really see has ever really abolished slavery. It's just slavery has changed form, right? It comes from, slavery by race to slavery by class and debt, right? And that's kind of the situation we're in right now. So it's really important for us to recognize that's where we're coming from, because I've seen it's this interesting dichotomy that happens when you free a slave, right? Not to say like I'm freeing all you slaves, but you'll either have someone that wants to go back to their master, right? Because they feel safe and secure and, life made sense with their master, or you'll have them be like, oh, okay, well, I'm empowered now. I'm going to become a master. And I saw that happen a lot over the years, especially 2017, 2016, when there wasn't how should I say it, a reflected structure in the social system, then anyone really kind of just became kind of a free for all. Anyone, could do anything, and whoever answers the most questions or whatever becomes more notable. And then, and that it created a lot of dynamics with, if anybody remembers a lot of the OG crew, it was very difficult to get people into Slack because, Mirax would come in and, curse at people and call them idiots for not knowing about block explorers and stuff. Right. And then, they're just, I noticed this interesting dynamic of people becoming empowered and then becoming prominent and then using that for their own self-gain, right? And so this social system, it's really important because it quantifies that structure and it quantifies the processes and how these things happen, so that you don't have just some random circumstance, because when you don't really have a clear protocol, a clear set, then anything really is acceptable. You get far enough down to behavior that, may not be ideal, it becomes a bigger problem down the road. So this is really important. That's why I spent so much time on the social architecture. And I first designed it in 2018 to essentially, it was dealing with some of the internal corruption. I just studied corruption and came up with the social system, and then started testing it and watching it. And it's really interesting how it worked, because it allows, like Phil said, us to identify, people that aren't necessarily malicious. That's interpretive, right? But, in the sense of alignment with the goals and the missions, generally speaking, a lot of people will preach decentralization, but then they really just want to use that to become, some sort of prominent decentralized figure, such as Vitalik, right? He's essentially Ethereum's dictator, even though it's masqueraded with this whole proof of stake and consensus and yada yada. But Vitalik has a lot of power over the currency, right? And there's a reason Satoshi stepped away. Because he didn't want to be seen that way. He didn't want to always influence it. And he knew it wouldn't really ever be truly decentralized if he was involved in the day-to-days, right? Now, I watched that unfold through Satoshi and what happened, and, seeing, certain government agencies going after him and seeing them going after the Bitcoin development. And it was pretty easily compromised with just 3 or 4 people in the GitHub and the developers, right? So that's why I originally came out. Vitalicet started this anonymously, and then I think it was 2015, a year and a half after, I put my face on it, because I wanted to ensure that vision. And I saw that, a blockchain or cryptocurrency is somewhat like, raising a child, and when a child is first born, it needs to behavioral analysis. It needs to understand the appropriate ways to act. It needs to understand how, to be a human, essentially. And if that is not there, then anyone else, around will imprint it. And that's why right now, Bitcoin, oh, what is it? Digital gold? Is it digital cash? Okay. Craig writes fake Satoshi, I mean, all these different things. And, what I really noticed with Satoshi too, which is, why I'm continuing, I consider myself continuing a lot of his work, because, he had a specific vision and a specific spark in what created Bitcoin. And that's why I think Bitcoin really has become somewhat stagnant in its development. I mean, you could say there's Lightning Network and segregated witness, but I mean, even segregated witness, I think, was first discussed, was it 2014, 2015 during the Scaling Bitcoin conferences. And then I think it was like 3 years later that it finally activated. So there's been very little progress on Bitcoin other than limiting opcodes, keeping the block size small. I think they added a little bit of multi-threading and to speed up the core and stuff. But that creative spark that created it kind of disappeared with Satoshi, because, that creative spark comes from a level of idealism, right? Decentralization is not simple to implement. It's quite the opposite. It's very easy to make a high scalable client server application and do a server cluster. But when you're talking about this trustless decentralized system, it's no joke. And that's one reason that Satoshi was the only person to be able to actually create a successful digital currency, because of the way he combined together Hashcash and I think it was called B Money. Was the original. He merged together a couple different architectures. And so long story short, the biggest fundamental weakness in Bitcoin that I saw, and this is something Ernest Hancock and me discussed extensively, was that it's easy to take over when you only have a limited number of people that are capable of developing it. And when you don't have a clear social structure that drives that consensus. Prior to Blockstream, there was the Bitcoin Foundation, and Gavin Andresen was one of the people that really, I think, led the Bitcoin Foundation. And there was still, closed group Bitcoin roundtables and stuff like that. And, this oligarchy really kind of formed in Bitcoin, the oligarchy of miners and the oligarchy of developers. And those two, constitute probably about a dozen people. Maximum, I mean, really, you've got a small number of people really that have control. And then the people that were, still trying to keep Bitcoin to its roots, such as Jeff Garzik, got pushed out. And then it became really easy to control this entire global decentralized system that would take a supercomputer to break. All you had to do was socially engineer a couple developers and compromised, right? And now, I mean, look at the Lightning Network. It's becoming a huge regulatory shoehole. It's limiting essentially the decentralization of Bitcoin, and it creates a relevance for banking and all these other issues, right? So I wanted to kind of touch on these philosophies a little bit too, because Phil kind of brought it to attention, and also to describe why, we came to the social architecture, because, I mean, I've been studying this. I started, as you guys all know, I started in about 2010, just realizing, well, there's a lot of problems in the world. We need to do something about it. And, first thing I started doing was put a couple steel plates together and ran some electricity through it and, created hydrogen. Then that led into cryptocurrency and everything. But as I got deeper into cryptocurrency and blockchain, the promise of it was really incredible. But I kept coming back to this issue of it's a human problem, right? That you can solve some elements of it with technical code, but, there's a fundamental human problem. And I think the fundamental problem is not necessarily human nature, but I believe that it's related to the social systems are not consistent with our true nature, right? The social systems right now, really, if you look statistically, most CEOs and, quote unquote leaders, they are sociopaths and narcissists. It's a pretty common thing. Statistically, a sociopath will succeed better in the business world than somebody that has a lot of empathy, because the game theory really is designed to foster that. And so over time, working in the professional world, you know, it rubs off to a certain point, and it makes people more calloused. And then, you know, people start viewing each other more objectively, like as an object rather, and as a resource rather than as a human. And it's taken away from that humanity, right? And I think in order to truly solve these problems, we need to develop these technologies that weave together and elucidate and bring out that better part of our humanity, right? Rather than that worst part. If anybody's heard the stories of the two wolves, right? It's an old parable from Native Americans, and you know, he says one wolf is the greed and the anger, and it, you know, wants to hate and consume, and then the other one is the love and empathy. And you know, the little boy says to the elder, well, you know, what wolf wins? What wolf wins? And he says, whatever one you feed, right? So the systems that we exist in feed that negative side of us, right? They feed and they cause us to, you know, be more deprived and then deprive each other. And so the social architecture really became this paramount functionality in it, because I mean, Bitcoin, it really took only about 2 years to compromise the protocol. From having Jeff Garzik, Gavin Andresen, Bruce Fenton, and the Bitcoin Foundation, they used the Scaling Bitcoin conference, and they used the narrative of decentralization to say, well, mom and pop can't run a node if the blocks are too big, you know, decentralization, you know, but then transaction fees exceeded $200 per transaction. And it's $200 for a 1 terabyte hard drive, right? The logic doesn't work, but they use that to push for segregated witness, which, you know, we use a form of segregated witness. We don't include the signature as a part of our hash, right? You know, that's a sound architecture, but the other aspects of the segregated witness that it's set up, you know, were somewhat questionable. And really, the fact is the segregated witness doesn't actually remove any data from the blockchain. It just removes what counts against the block size. So you still have a similar amount of data. You know, having a witness, you can prune those signatures off, you know, over time, but we've developed it with our signature chains where you can do just as much, if not more. And I guess this is a cool segue into, you know, it's called a signature chain because you have, it's like your own personal blockchain. If you guys are familiar, a blockchain, if you change any piece of data in the past, then it's going to break the chain and you're going to have to rebuild the entire chain, right? So think about your sig chain as like that. You have your genesis, and then you build all of your transactions, and then you have your this would be the tail and the head. It's technically like a linked list, a cryptographic linked list. It's called cipher block chaining. It's an architectural concept that's been around, I think, since the 70s or 80. But anyway, so if you have assurance that everything between the head and the tail are consistent and they're an unbroken chain of events, then you don't need to have irrelevant data between there and there. So you could have 10,000 transactions in your signature chain. As long as you have this transaction signature that's signing your tail and you have a transaction signature that's signing the head, you don't need all of those transactions in between. So that means the more transactions you make, actually the more scalable it becomes, in a sense, because you're getting a larger bang for your buck. You only need 2 signatures to represent 10,000 transactions now. Now you need 2 signatures to represent 20,000 transactions, 2 signatures to represent 100,000 transactions. For those that aren't aware, the signature is the largest data load. It's what takes up the most data in the blockchain. Our typical signatures are 64, 128, 192, 192 bytes. For an ECDSA, a Falcon or a post-quantum signature scheme, which we have the most compact, is still about 1.4 kilobytes, right? So now imagine, you know, a kilobyte per transaction. Now you do 1,000 transactions a second. Now you're doing a megabyte per second, right? If you guys recall, when I was doing those tests, I was doing up to 4 megabytes per second in my highest scaling capabilities. But, you know, we get this really incredible aggregation with the signature chains because you're chaining them together, and you don't need to have the signatures in between those two, because if you have a signed head that has a link to your previous block or your previous transaction, and then you have a signed head, then you know that everything in between there couldn't have been modified. So you don't need to include the signature or the public key. So when you have 10,000 transactions, you know, let's assume you're using post-quantum signature scheme. 1 kilobyte, right? That would be 10 megabytes that you would be saving on just your SIG chain. And then you get to, 1 million transactions, that's going to be 10 gigabytes or 1 gigabyte, sorry, you would save if you get to 1 million transactions. So, it's this massive reduction in actual capacity that's needed. So, just going on a little bit of a tangent there to bring it back. But, what I've noticed being a problem is there's a cultural issue in crypto. And I think a lot of people don't fully take it seriously. There's a lot of CEOs, there's a lot of people going out there and saying decentralization, but they're CEOs, right? They're not practicing the actual principles and ethos of it. So that's one thing that we've really focused on. And that's, the starfish and the social architectures are really fundamental. If anyone hasn't read the book, The Starfish and the Spider, highly recommend to do that. That's where the original idea of a starfish kind of came into view. And especially once, I watched EOS launch and trying to do DAOs and all these other people trying to do DAOs, and they didn't work. They fell apart. They fell apart at about 1,000 people. This, it's been working great. I think we're at 40, 50 people, depending on what group. I'm not even fully aware of the full directory internally. And it's been working really well with the court system, the jury, the trials, and it's creating a nice, healthy push and pulling off of each other, where everybody's driving each other forward, which is what we really want. And it's actually reduced the amount of time I need to really be involved in organizational stuff. I've really been free to focus on code a lot since the Starfish has really been, especially since the jury, and since Phil has been helping a lot. So be sure to give Phil some appreciation on that. But I was coding most of the night. I made a lot of progress. I see Kendall's here if he wants to give an update too. Essentially, I got client mode working, logging in. There's one little architectural thing that I'm adding because there's a lot of dependent transactions and stuff. So I'm adding like a lookup protocol so that you can look up specific pieces of data recursively while you're processing some other triggered event. Other than that, I was able to log into the US SIG chain, check all of the events. It's generating everything correctly. I've got all my indexes. I tested the credits. I haven't really seen any bug reports from Beth. Beth, I think, has been on live production for about a month now, running their network. So everything's looking fairly well formed as far as that's concerned. I mean, ideally, we want to give you guys a Christmas present. We're not making any promises on that because there's a lot still that can happen between now and then, but we're pretty much in the creating builds. I think, Kendall, do you want to give, since you're here, if you have a moment, do you want to give a little update on your mobile?
Sure.
Yeah,
can you hear me right now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Awesome. So the big thing is that when we made the mobile wallet using the 2020 technology, and since then a lot of things have changed in terms of like all our dependencies and whatnot. So it's kind of taken a while to kind of port that stuff over. But yesterday was a big headway, and I got most of it working. I told Colin that I was so happy everything started showing up. I didn't realize none of the icons on the buttons they're all just question marks. I'm like, oh damn. But at least you can click the buttons. So yeah, a couple things here and there that need to be resolved. But in terms of syncing, I mean, it's working great. Colin was able to get the download rate the processing rate high enough where it's pretty good. The goal is still to have some sort of way to like basically bootstrap the chain. But it's not a technical reason why it can't be done. It is, I don't want to say can't be done, but it's the issues are not technical. They are dealing with the security and rules and regulations of both Apple and Android, as they have different ways of handling or not even handling, like being able to download something and unpack it. So that's been kind of something that I kind of had to put on the back burner a little bit just to kind of get, some of these other things resolved. But I know that is a question that people have been asking, and it's certainly something that I'm looking at, and I hope that it can be done and we can get that feature in there. But yeah, so
what was your sync time on the mobile, directly on the mobile wall? I got 12 seconds on my desktop, but I'm guessing it's not that fast.
No, it was like a minute, maybe
a minute. Really? That's it. Oh wow! So it made a huge difference on the mobile devices then, huh?
It made a huge difference. I mean, I didn't time it, awesome. But like I got it like installed. Went to go get another cup of coffee, came back, and it was like 80% done. So, yeah, I definitely fast. So the good news is you can see the UI and it's syncing. So, just a couple things of just usability that are missing that, hopefully are not too bad. But yeah, I think, and then desktop wise, we've been testing that for months now. So there's really not much. I haven't put in the newest core for merging yet, but I don't expect there to be much of anything. So that's something that we, it should be fine. Like I said, I've just been kind of like, if I'm in mobile mode, I'm in mobile mode, I'm not like going back and forth. It's just too much to keep track of. But the desktop was pretty good last time we ran some tests. We had issues. Well, we had issues with the wallet, but it wasn't necessarily the wallet. It was that we had on the test net, one of the blocks was like
huge. Yeah.
It was huge or corrupted or something. And the only way to get past it was like bootstrapping from, So, that's
my final bug. That's my final bug I'm going to look into, which I'm pretty sure it's just a send buffer size. I mean, you tested it at a higher buffer size, right? Even like 10 to 100 megabytes in it.
Yeah, and it was working fine. I think it might even just be Windows because.
Wait.
Sorry.
No, it should be fixed now. No, I just remembered. I had that issue syncing client modes when I was updating. I was doing a bunch of work on staging when I was dealing with the DDoS attacks, and I couldn't sync past a certain block. And I figured out that issue. So I don't know if we've tested a sync on the new testnet. I can do that today, actually, and jump into the testnet and see if it works. We need to update the seed node, though, that's processing the request, because it was a server-side issue where I'm doing like a sequential reading, but there was one block in there that somehow messed up the sequential read limit. So I just went and reverted to a random read cycle. And that allowed because the mobile wallet wouldn't sync either, even off the mainnet. There was one block on there that was a similar thing. It was a large enough block. It wouldn't sequentially read well enough. So that's all updated in merging now. And it logs in. You can log in. I think it processes notifications for the most part. I'm still testing all of that completely. And then I just have to add a couple notification events for tokenized debits, essentially. And I'm getting it right now where, like, the way it was done prior, because I built the whole client mode stuff and then passed it on to Paul to focus on the LOD, and he just touched up a couple of things. A lot of the security things were deleted, like checking previous dependents and stuff. I developed it so it can look up every single dependent now. So it should feel almost exactly like a full wallet, a full node. Like you should have just about every feature in there. It's set for the register API, which is a global API lookup, and it builds all the indexes and everything. So we should be able to launch, ideally, the desktop wallet as a client wallet to start, and then bootstrap in the background if you want to move to a full wallet, so you can just get your wallet up and going. Like I said, on my desktop, it's synced in 12 seconds, about 30,000 blocks per second. And that way we can give, because I know there's a lot of people with like low hard drive space and stuff like that. So even having the client mode working on the desktop wallet, I think will be a really powerful feature for people, because it'll just be one click setup of the wallet, and then bootstrap that in parallel while you're in client mode. If you want to move to a full node, right? But that will still allow you to use the wallet until the bootstrap is complete.
Yeah, I think we have it right now that it I think it starts as full, and then and the first time you open it up, it asks if you want to do light, but we can definitely, I know that we had talked about that. And I think that's kind of why we made all this stuff, was like, we knew we were going to switch it. So definitely.
That's why I've been going deep into like the tokenized stuff and adding all the event listeners and everything. I'm writing I decided last night, like I got it all working, but I decided last night I'm going to create a separate server, separate from the Tritium server, that allows you to do lookups independently. So it's kind of like a database clustering lookup system that just gives you Merkle proofs that you can just download Merkle transactions to get certain states that you need. So it automatically, anytime there's a dependent it doesn't have, it can just do a lookup to the Merkle proof. So we should be able to get all of that functionality for tokens and everything that we have available in the wallet, name lookups, all of that stuff. So yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, I think like Colin said, we're definitely pushing really hard, and I think that we can definitely, I think what we can at least do is definitely kind of open up the testing and having people come in. I'll just be open. I think I'm a little worried about, pushing to production when we're kind of in holiday, and it's like, well, if I have to go meet up with family and stuff, it's like, and if something happens, I won't be able to get back in time or whatever. So, but I do definitely want to give the community something for Christmas, and something, to say that, like, hey, we're not, I know it's been a while, but we've had stuff cooking for a long time, and,
getting out the lab. Yeah. You want to get it out of the lab slowly. That's so everybody knows what to expect. We're planning on getting, sometime, hopefully by Christmas, that's what we're shooting for, but things can happen. But sometime from as early as Christmas to as late as New Year, as a holiday kind of gift, we're going to do the final mobile wallet beta, or close to final, and the final desktop wallet beta, so that it'll be just an open beta for anyone.
Right.
Using it. Should be pretty production. And then we want to give that about a week, depending, to get bug reports, make sure everything's running kosher. There's nothing else that we need to tie up. And then we basically set the activation timestamp from that date. And then that's when we actually approach the App Store and the Play Store, and we start getting it accepted into all of those. I'd like to work a little bit, like I want to dig down to maybe over the holiday season, in the background refresh, and see if we can figure, because what happens, guys, when you press your lock screen for Apple, for instance, it just strips all your sockets. But I can still listen to music, and we have background refresh like enabled, right? But I don't think we're fully utilizing it. So I want to get it so the whole node can run background refresh, so that you can sync with the lock screen off. That's ideally what we'd like to have for our final beta. And then the market, I'm designing it where the market will still be able to process. You'll still be able to process all of your contracts, because ideally I would like to see our marketplaces inside the wallet, so we can start, buying and selling and doing that type of stuff. I think that's going to be really, really important, especially, I mean, if you're seeing Kendall, there's no eggs anymore. It's hard to find eggs,
Right.
you know, because egg farms are burning up. And, you know, it's not like it's hard to get eggs and chickens, but we just
Right.
don't know each other, like who has eggs, who doesn't have eggs, who's got a fruit tree, you know. So building kind of a global geospatial registry, I think that's going to be a really key use case. And the mobile wallet will be, you know, key in that, you know, utilization, is because people need to eat, and, you know, the supply chains and everything we've come to rely on are becoming less and less reliable. And there still is, like, you know, people talk about Bitcoin, but they think of Bitcoin as kind of like an investment, right? Oh, I'm investing in it like it's gold or it's anything, you know, where we want to help shift that as like, no, this is a new way. This is a new currency. This is a new economy that we're building together, not an investment, right? It's a way of life. And, you know, developing something that people can relate to fundamentally, I think is going to be huge. Like, you know, getting voting fixed and getting food supply chains fixed, or at least to the point where we can develop our own, right? Our own transportation, our own supply, our own food networks, our own co-ops, you know, grocery stores and stuff like that. I think all those things are really, really important to get regular people using blockchain. Because, I mean, I've ran into a lot of people, they buy Bitcoin and they lose their Bitcoins, you know, lost 10 grand, 15 grand because they deleted the wallet. Oh, didn't know about the recovery phrase. And there's a lot of healing, I think, that really needs to happen. I don't know what your sampling is, Kendall, but from what I've seen, a lot of people just like, they either see crypto as just a speculative investment or, you know, just some, you know, magical internet money. I haven't seen any real concrete usage of it yet. It's all still been speculative use. So that's something that we want to change. And the mobile wallet is key to that in developing these geospatial marketplaces and three-dimensional.
I had a friend, or my brother had a friend come into town, and we were just out to dinner and all talking about, you know, just various things. And obviously, like, he asked me, like, well, you know, what I did and whatnot. And I told him, I'm a programmer and I work for a bunch of different projects, but right now I'm like doing a bunch of stuff for Nexus. And, you know, he was familiar with blockchain or whatever, but, you know, it did make me feel a little giddy inside when I showed him the mobile wallet, and he's like, oh, is that actually running like on your phone? And I was like, yes, it is running on your phone. And he was like, wow, that's really impressive. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it definitely, it feels good to kind of like show people something that like is leaps and bounds better than anything else.
Yeah. I mean, did you see Ethereum announce that's like their plan for 2030 to run a direct client node? So just for a frame of reference for people to know, for one, what Kendall did, like getting that mobile wallet to run, is no easy feat. I mean, you were beating your head for like close to a year, weren't you? It was like a lot of 2020.
It was like, it was basically all of 2020. Yeah.
Yeah. Getting the client mode. And then for another frame of reference, guys, okay, Bitcoin, UTXO, there's no state to manage, right? So it's really easy to just Merkle proof right into the chain, you know, a conventional chain, no problem to make even a light node. Not that nobody's done light nodes for Bitcoin even, but still it's not that complicated. But now take a smart contract register-based virtual machine where you have interdependent states that are in different scopes. It's essentially kind of like a basic shard where your mobile wallet is your own little mini shard of your own specific data and data relevant to you, right? Now imagine building a client mode for that, and you have all these register dependencies. I could have a contract that calls another register that I need to have in order to validate, but then I need to do all of this without needing trust, right? And needing to trust the node that's sending me this data. And so, you know, we've done it. It's working. It's a huge feat to have gotten even as far as we are now, even though it's a little slower than I think we all would have liked. Slow and steady is really important, especially since we're setting a foundation right now, you know, getting the foundational elements in the mobile wallet set up so that we can just really deploy a lot of new features from here, right? So it's no easy feat what Kendall managed to do, because most developers just kind of deer in the headlights. They just go, whoa, you know, I've never been taught how in school. That's,
Right.
you know, I mean, how many coders have we gone through, Kendall? Like 20 or something, like
Yeah.
over the years, man. Like, remember Max and like, I mean, just so many like deers in the headlights. I mean, some of them are good people, but they just had no idea what to do. And, you know, I mean, just deer. And I mean, Jack was a very competent developer. He graduated from a very competent school. But I mean, when it came to any, you know, significant features and stuff, it just was like, whoa, they didn't know what to do. Because there is no book written on how to do it. You know, Kendall had to figure out. Nobody's ever run a mobile wallet, you know, and that's, you know, a plan that Ethereum has for 8 years from now. That's their 8-year up plan to run a mobile wallet on a phone. You know, we did it. So, you know, we've had proof of stake since 2015. So, you know, we've just have a different priority of features, I guess you could say. And we've been deploying our smart contract engine very slowly and methodically, instead of just throwing all this complexity into a virtual machine and then figuring out how to manage it later. We're developing the fundamental architectures to develop and manage this complexity as it grows. So it started very simple, and we're, you know, slowly expanding that scope out so that we don't create combinatorial explosion, where Ethereum kind of is, that's one folly that they have. I mean, the network gets congested because, you know, there's only so fast that it can process, and they require so much disk state, and they just deployed it and put it out there to get it running. And it's not very easy to modify that after a point. And that's why they have this 2030 agenda, and their proof of stake system has really become quite centralized. You know, ours is pretty decentralized. I mean, I don't really see any monopolization of blocks. You know, I mean, there's some high trust keys and stuff, but I mean, I think we're at what, 45% stake now. It's stake. There keeps getting more people staking. The difficulty's going up. There's a really nice distribution, and that sets up, you know, with your trust score, which also adds voting weight, which for anybody that's not familiar, the one reason the trust score is so important is we need to make old money not be able to buy new time. Okay. Think about that for a second. Like, all the old money in the world buys all the new time, but the money doesn't age. It just gets passed down, right? But we age, our products age, our objects age, but this old money doesn't, the old guard, right? And so you're talking about building, okay, let's build a new decentralized voting democracy, a liquid democracy where you vote with your tokens. Well, you know, what's your market cap? 10 million? Okay, cool. $5 million and now it's mine, you know? I mean, $5 million is chump change to these people. So the trust system is really important because it develops something that only new money can buy the new time, you know, and it kind of plays on the game theory too, that if you're more wealthy, then your time is worth more money, right? So in a sense, the uber wealthy aren't going to be wasting as much time to try to build up trust keys. They're probably going to try to buy people out in the future and try to buy out their trust keys. But those people, you know, if you develop enough incentive around that, then they're not going to be willing to sell that. And, you know, we have safeguards too, of like, you can't transfer a trust key, and you can't move, you know, once you move the stake out, then it locks the trust out. Or if you have a trust key that's, you know, farmed with like 10,000 Nexus, and then you dump 1 million Nexus into that trust key, it's not going to give you more voting weight. You have to do coin weighted time, right? So you have to have all of those coins up front and then weight that through time. So these things are really mechanisms to protect against the ability to corrupt a democracy, which I've seen happen. I mean, Ethereum, it's an oligarchy. I mean, it's got what, 5 validators, if you've seen that, Kendall. It's just 5 people that really control, you know.
It's very like I don't know. It's depressing that these projects are the ones that are popular, but you know.
Yeah, I think it's reflective of the time, though. I mean, I think they are those projects are somewhat they're following the same grain as society has been doing for the last century, you know, with industrialization, centralization. You know, they've got all these new fancy words, but people don't fully understand the implications of those yet. But now, I mean, I'm seeing a lot more, like the time is becoming more and more our time as we see new events transpire. People are starting to recognize, whoa, there's a lot of corruption. We can't trust these people. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. So, you know, I think it's a symptom of that. They're popular because they're adhering to kind of the old mindset, and we're here creating a new mindset, which, you know, is going to have less, you know, recognition at first, but then, over time, it just is going to change everything. Just like, I mean, Tesla and Edison with AC versus DC. DC was already more established, but Tesla's, technology won because it was superior. It worked better. It functioned to provide the requirements that people really needed. And that's kind of where I see us is we're building it for the future. We're building it for a time. I mean, and it's totally completely reflected by looking at Ethereum's roadmap and seeing that what they want to build, we've already built. They have a more complex smart contract engine right now, but we're not too far behind. I'd say another year, maybe 2 years tops before we're up to par with like the same functionality and everything. So, just keep that in mind, guys, too, that it's important to think that forward. We're thinking of the next few hundred years, not the next 5, right? When we're designing this to be able to sustain itself through that. The mobile wallet, for instance, running as a node, we don't have any centralized infrastructure that needs to be run to maintain the mobile wallet, right? I remember when OpenBazaar went down, this supposed decentralized marketplace. Remember that? Like the whole platform went down because they stopped paying their server fees, And it's just like, well, that's not very decentralized then, is it? So, it's a powerful concept. And, when you get enough people behind it and you develop things that people relate to, I think it's going to change a lot of the dynamics right now. I mean, there's people in Netherlands just putting up shops on the side of the road to try to sell some of their produce and their food because the grocery stores are trying to clothesline them. In Venezuela, for instance, people are starving there, even though the ground is fertile, because you have to use Monsanto seeds, and then they can control how many Monsanto seeds are issued to different people. It's a real problem everywhere. I mean, there should not be starvation in Venezuela. It's such a fertile place. Everything grows there. But unless you use Monsanto seeds, you can't sell to the grocery store. Egg shortages in UK. It's because grocery stores are paying the farmers below their margins. So the farmers are losing money on all of their egg crops and they're going out of business, right? It's just, there's all these dynamics that can be changed. And that's where, I don't think crypto has fully managed to get that golden use case. It's going to be that catalyst to global adoption. And I don't think central bank digital currencies are a means. I think the central bank digital currencies potentially are a catalyst for the work that we're doing. Especially we're working on working with some guys and helping with a decentralized ATM network and stuff. I mean, once we start getting all of these things put in place, it just, you can't stop it. And it grows exponentially as a network, right? So cool. Let's see. Why is Nexus still?
I just wanted to say that I just hit 2% on my trust on my staking today. I had it higher before, and then I had some computer issues, and they just sat there for a while, but it's back up now.
Congratulations, man! Awesome. Do you have anything else that you want to comment on, Kendall? Before I start answering some questions?
I hopefully will in the next day or two we'll get some more information. But I think definitely what we'll start doing is, because we have this testing group right now that's closed. But I think we're just going to open it up and get all the people that want to come in, and we'll just slowly start going from beta to beta and just having more people join in on each new round. And
perfect.
And I mean, like I said, I don't really feel like there's too much wrong, but you never know, someone might click that special edge case and everything breaks. But definitely keep an ear out, everyone, and we'll let you know when there's new stuff to download.
Yeah, and a lot of the difficult parts are really done. It's just kind of the fine tuning right here. Kendall made a big breakthrough with the Android yesterday, getting the new operating system to work. That was a part that you were having some trouble with. I got the dependency systems working with all the new indexing. So that was a big hurdle that needed to be overcome. So I suspect I'll probably be wrapped up with everything I need by Friday, and then we can coordinate on some new builds. And the new, mobile wallet, and we can do some testing over this weekend. I'll be around. So everything's looking good. as far as the development is concerned. Have not had any roadblocks. We just plowed through them. The uncertainties were really the Android operating system. That was a big uncertainty of when, right? Just because
Right.
it's a needle in a haystack. You never know, right?
Yeah, it was
So
like once like that hurdle was it'll be, well, I don't want to say smooth sailing, but like I said, the issues now are mostly just visual glitches. It's not,
yeah,
we've gotten past the technical issues, and now it's just like, all right, so why do these, icons aren't showing up? Like, but that's just visual, right? Everything behind the scenes is working good.
yeah, and same on the back end. Able to log in, able to sync my sig chain, sync my events, process some basic events. Everything's checking out pretty well there. It feels pretty stable. So I want to have like another day or two with it just to make sure that everything is tested pretty well. So we're going to plan on seeing if we can get a new beta out by Sunday, which is Christmas Day. No promises on it, but we would like to give you guys a Christmas present. And it seems like we're relatively in path as long as we don't run into any snags. It should be pretty straightforward from here. And then probably by the end of the year, we'll most likely, I mean, if we get a beta out on Sunday, we could get bug reports in and release a new one probably by the new year. And then give that a little bit of time to just make sure that we don't have any snags, and also, get the community's agreement that it's ready for release. We want to do this with feedback with you guys, not to just us be like, hey, everything's good now. We want to make sure everybody has some time to give their feedback. And that doesn't necessarily have to be bug related feedback, but feature requests and things such as that. So yeah, everything's looking good. I'm happy that we got what we got done so far. I'm happy I finally got the rest of the client mode stuff in the network. That was a big ick. I'm like, what's the proper way to do this? But it's looking good now. So I'll answer some questions. Macau, why is Nexus still alive? Well, because we're building. This is like, because we haven't abandoned the project. Well, because the community's still here supporting it, because we're all working together still. That's why it's not dead, because we're all here building it. It's not, we don't consider success of the price. It's just, getting it done, building it, and getting things deployed on it, right? So we have some use cases already. There's different, some more private, some more public. We've developed a lot of really unique technology that really benefits a lot of the industry. We're continually developing it regardless of the price. So it's still alive because we're still here working on it. And, we don't consider being dead or alive based off of the price, but based off of the contributions and the people. And everybody's still here. The whole team's still here. Everyone's still here working together because we all believe in this common vision of, building technology to make the world a better place. It's fundamentally what we're here to do. And, there's, 2,780 people in the Telegram. But if you understand exponential growth, that can change very quickly. So, we're here because we see the potential in what we're building as well. And, it's direct experience that everyone's here too. It's not, Colin's word or whatever. Like we use the wallet. If you've ever used the Nexus wallet and tried to use another crypto wallet, why don't you tell us the difference, Makal? And maybe that'll be a little bit more of your answers of why it's alive. It's alive because we all care about it and we're focusing on building it together. Robert, question about geospatial collateral for the carriage of goods paid by the carrier. What happens if the goods break in transport? No one's fault. For example, the plant with despite. Robert, that really just comes down to the contract and how the contract, the collateral and it works. It's kind of think of the collateral as like insurance. So, if you want to say that it's, you'll just have some sort of stipulation to say, well, if the product breaks and the buyer does not like the product when they receive it, then they can sign with the seller, right? And essentially grab the collateral from the transport. And generally speaking, I think it makes sense to have liability on the person that's transporting it If there is no liability for them breaking it during transport, then they're not going to be accountable, and they're just going to throw boxes and not care about it. But if it hits you in the pocket, then, you know, it hits you in the pocket. So I think it would be most appropriate for the carrier to have that liability, because when they pick it up, they're going to inspect that it is in good enough condition to deliver. If they pick it up and it's broken, then the liability goes on the seller. If the buyer gets it broken, the liability is on the carrier, because the carrier should have mentioned that it was broken when they received it. What happens if the quality of the goods does not suit the buyer? Well, that's where it's a 2/3 multi-sig. So I call it an arbitration triangle. So 2 of the 3 parties can sign off. So if, you know, you don't like it, you know, from the seller, if it wasn't what you advertised, then you can sign off with the carrier in order to, you know, return the goods back to the individual and get your money back. Or if, you know, the buyer and seller agree that they just want to cancel it, then they cancel it, right? So it's 2 of 3. So that way you create some redundancy, and it also helps with the security of it as well. If such security will be in the contract as additional charges, the carrier can specifically report the recipient's absence to earn more money and not try to deliver the goods the first time. No, that's the whole point of collateral on the carrier, right? If you try to just earn more money and not deliver goods the first time and whatever, you know, that's built into the contract where it takes away from your actual total costs, right? From your total profit. So you just disincentivize those types of behaviors with the collateral and putting that liability on the carrier. They're going to want to have an incentive to get that to the endpoint recipient as quickly as possible and not make up malarkey that could cause them to lose some of their profits, right? So essentially what you do is you just make it not profitable to be an asshole or greedy, you know, pardon my language, but that's the fundamental way. You're never going to change people's behavior, but you can create different pressures in their circumstances that we're going to guide their behavior in ways that are more suited, right? NXFS have ransomware protection. Well, it's not a locally bound file system. So, I mean, there's going to be replication. I mean, essentially your file is encrypted. All of your files are encrypted anyhow. So, you know, I mean, you're not going to be able to get that and decrypt it. I mean, I'm going to just re-encrypt it with another encryption and try to hold it ransom. That's why you have redundancy and replication. Most likely, most people have multiple participants that are hosting the file. So if you have one participant with a corrupted file because they get some sort of ransomware, it's easily retrievable. Is there a bigger project in the process of transitioning to Nexus? I am not sure exactly what I've been kind of out of the use cases loop right now. I mean, there's a few that few people I'm speaking to that are potentially big use cases. I spoke with someone more recently. She's working on decentralized. I'll spare the details, but there's some people that I've met over the years that we're in communication with. It's pretty common responsive people in any industry being pretty mesmerized by our technology. I mean, we made a lot of rounds through 2018. That's one part of the influence of the architecture, to kind of understand what the needs of it are. So, I mean, we're pretty technically sound, and there's been a lot of interest from the right parties, but we're focusing right now less on getting a big company to use Nexus, which, you know, I mean, scenario wise, let's say we got a big use case with some large company, a Fortune 100 company. Everyone's going to be like, yay, right? The price is going to go up. But then now that company has control over the psychological value of the market based on how involved they are or not, right? So we're staying away from like these big partnership announcements because that just gives unnecessary control of the system and the economics to these large parties that really, you know, re-centralize the control. So we're focusing on decentralized concepts. And, you know, I mean, You never know what's going to be the next Apple or the next big thing, right? Just because the dinosaurs exist right now doesn't mean unicorns don't still have the capability to take them out. And the blockchain really, from what I've seen, breeds the unicorns. It helps the unicorns. So that's who we're really focusing on rather than the dinosaurs. For most people, decentralization is not a priority. Why is this so? Well, Robert, most people don't see it as a priority because the system is still functioning. They don't understand the implications of it. I mean, it's really simple to just point out that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So the reason that it's not a priority is because they haven't reached the precipice yet. They haven't reached their own precipice. They haven't come to recognize the follies of centralization. I have. I've seen a lot of issues in centralization, which has driven me to design these things as I have, but it's just a matter of time. The life isn't going to go on forever where people are going to be like, yay, centralization. The more and more despotic control from fascist centralized governments, communist governments, fascist, all of that, it's going to just drive more and more people to say, yo, nobody should have that ultimate power. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And even just simple things like, a decentralized transportation system that doesn't take 20% of all of your earnings and doesn't have all this specific red tape and control that they exercise over you. You have your own sovereign control. We have to demonstrate also that it's superior. And so far I haven't seen that happen yet. Most of the decentralized technology is inferior. So why are people going to move to that? Based off of a philosophical understanding, they will at some point in the future. But I think the technology needs to get to a more matured point too, before people will really fully understand the need for it. One of my arguments was that Ned can turn off your internet at any time. What was his response to me? Dad, I've been using the internet for 30 years and I've never once been turned off. That's why people don't value decentralization. They think it's never going to happen. Dad, I've been using the internet for 30 years and never once seen it turned off. Well, when it turns off, then what? What are you going to do then? You're not going to do anything. You're not going to have anything. But if we're building a decentralized internet in the meantime, they turn your internet off because you say something they don't like, then what? Well, now you got Nexus. Now you're going to move to Nexus, right? Yeah, absolutely you will. Because, it makes sense in your own mind if it's never happened to you. But once it happens, it's too late, right? So, those types of mindsets are okay. But if you want to share news in Australia, your social credit score is tied to your internet account now. And if your social credit score is too low, bye-bye internet. Cuban protests shut off the internet. And then, a lot of controlling of internet traffic, filtering, using search engines, controlling narratives. That may not all be apparent yet, but you can say, son, someday you will thank me for working on what we're working on, because your internet might get shut down, might get filtered, or something might happen. You might say the wrong thing. You think you're doing everything right and everything's great. That's the problem with dictatorships. You think you're following all the rules, and then you say something wrong that you didn't realize, and now you're in a concentration camp, or now your internet shut off, or whatever else. So, it's the fundamental principle that the internet is designed to be an open information sharing system is becoming more apparent that it's not quite so open as we had, originally anticipated. And it's, also the economics of it drive people into, creating a lot of costs for themselves. So, yeah, sure, Dad, I got 30, years of using the internet. Well, hey, son, using Nexus, you can earn $10 a month rather than spending 80, right? You change the economics, the game theory, and that's going to drive a lot of people towards, oh, okay, that makes more sense for me. What's in it for me? Oh, wait, now I'm creating economic prosperity where I wasn't able to create it before, right? Where the conventional centralized system was consuming my resources. Now I'm actually producing resources from it, right? So you change the economics and the game theory and the incentive in that way. And not everybody's going to get it, and not everybody's going to hit the precipice immediately, but that's why the incentives are important. You flip the game theory. Why do I care about the file system? Oh, because I can earn money from running my hard drive. Oh, cool, right? That everyday people, as we start to see more and more economic constraint, that will further and hence, their desire to go to it. Some people may not do it philosophically. They may do it, fiscally, related to their income, to earn a residual income, right? So, there's lots of different reasons. I don't think everybody's always going to agree on the need for it. And people will be cynical and say, oh yeah, it works. What's wrong with the world? It works. Well, it works until it doesn't. But the problem with that mindset is once it doesn't work, you're fucked. And if you don't have any other plans. So we're working on those plans so that you're not fucked, pardon my language, when it happens, right? It's important. If you don't anticipate these things, then you're left, shit out of luck. That's why you bring a spare tire in your car. Well, I've driven my car for 20 years and never blown a tire. Well, knock on wood. You just blew a tire today. Now what? Oops. Well, now I'm stuck in the middle of nowhere with a tire. It's just, so preparation is luck favors the prepared, I should say. So we're being prepared. And the internet model is archaic. It's bad. I mean, you can spoof IP addresses. You don't know who's who. There's hacking, there's spoofing, there's phishing, there's security constraints. I mean, there's so many other facets of the internet that we're fixing besides just the decentralized aspect. The internet's totally unsafe. And so we want to make it safer in the same, way. And we're doing that with the file system, hosting, decentralized search, open algorithms, decentralized identification, locator identifier separation protocol, locator systems, satellite communication, using our own ISM frequencies, building our own hardware network, monetizing. I mean, there's so many facets to it that we're fixing. Quoting Dino, he says the internet's fundamentally broken, and it is. You can just go on BorderGate protocol and announce, yo, hey, these my block of IP addresses. I don't own them, but I'm going to tell you that I own them. And guess what? All the routers believe you. It's bad. It's really bad. I mean, the internet's kind of held together with sticks and tape. I'm serious. It's bad. So, there's fundamental architectural issues that we're addressing as well. The decentralization is an important aspect of it, but if people aren't as, moved by the decentralized argument, you bring up the security. I mean, people don't like to be afraid of opening their emails and having to have all these virus scanners sucking all their computers' resources and all these things and then still getting hacked, right? We want to fix that too. So there's a lot of other aspects. And Phil is right. I mean, most people need to learn the hard way too. Like, hey, Dad, I've been driving my car for 30 years and I never had a tire blow. I don't need a spare tire. Well, how'd that work out for you? How a hybrid network posts remote login. That's not hybrid. It works for hybrid, but the remote login system is just, it works for any level of it. I got to get going now, but I'll do my best to answer it quickly. The way it essentially works is you have your local device. On your local device, you have your mobile wallet. Your mobile wallet's listening and opening connections, right? It's actually connecting, talking to the network. Then you have your web app that has another node that's running. So when I want to log in with Nexus, I'm going to submit my username to their login portal. Their login portal is going to do a quick lookup and say, okay, this username is this Genesis ID. I'm going to open up a request to this person. I'm going to check, okay, here they are. I'm going to connect to them. Then I'm going to go to their mobile wallet and say, hey, I'm requesting authorization to, use your SigChain Genesis ID. Can I get a signature of approval? You say yes. You send a signature back, signing a nonce. Use a nonce. You don't get replay attacks. That's done. Now, whenever the app, that essentially becomes an authentication system, kind of like SSH. Now, anytime that app says, hey, I want to send coins or I want to create an NFT or whatever else like that, it's going to send the request to my mobile wallet, right? So your mobile wallet is processing the API requests. So you're offloading the computation onto other people's local devices. And that also ensures that credentials never leave the device. That's really important for eliminating phishing, because phishing is essentially creating a fake login page, allows you to get somebody to type in their password and boom. The remote login system essentially offloads that computation. And if anybody's ever used like a two-factor authentication for a Google account, for instance, if you have the YouTube app, it will say, hey, click OK on your YouTube app, and you'll go and you'll open up your phone and it'll say, hey, this person wants to log into your Google account. Is this okay? Yes. It'll feel similar to that with your mobile wallet. So it becomes a type of app credential management system where you actually don't ever expose credentials externally over the internet. They're all kept on your mobile device. That ensures you have the highest level of security. And then you also have higher security on the web application because they don't have to manage password hashes. They don't have to deal with authentication, all of that stuff. They don't have to have sensitive data. They can't get hacked because there's nothing to hack, right? You have to actually hack the physical device, and the physical devices all across the globe. And you get higher scaling because now you're not putting all of the server-side processing on that server. You're offloading it to everybody's specific devices. The internet gets switched off at places where there is a public outrage. Has happened already in a few countries. Yes, the internet's been being turned off many times. The internet is, like I said, it's held together with popsicle sticks and tape. I mean, they have these big cables they string across the ocean floor, and surprise, sharks bite that, right? Yes, they use cables. They literally take a giant ship with a big spool, and they drag a cable across the whole ocean floor. And that's how the U.S. talks to Europe. But since these cables can be tapped, you can do side channel attacks. You can actually decrypt communication through a side channel attack that's just reading the electromagnetic field going through the wire, and they're essentially able to reverse engineer the data going through that, even if it's encrypted. That's called the side channel attack. So these locations of these cables are highly secret. When the locations are secret, that creates an ability for people to control access to that secret, and it's very easy to just disconnect that cable at any point in time that's desired. And that has happened numerous times in the past. The internet is fundamentally broken. IP version 6 does not fix it. And this is an assessment I have come to through many, many years of working with the people that built the internet. And they, said the same thing. The internet is fundamentally broken. And when you have a fundamentally broken architecture, it needs to be reassessed and rebuilt. So there's many facets and reasons besides just the decentralization. But the decentralization is my philosophical drive, because I believe it's a type of humanitarian effort. It solves a lot of problems in one, right? But not everybody vibes with that. So that's why you need to have all these different incentives. I would like to make a website through Nexus. This is something I may be able to do after 5.1. No, you can, hosting will be, you're not like, Nexus isn't like a website builder like Wix or anything, Shay. So if you want, you can with Bubble. Bubble will allow you to make your own website that's API driven. That's kind of like the builder. Think of us as like the back end. So hosting, you'll be able to host certain pieces of data and stuff like that. The idea with the hosting system, with the file system, is you'll be able to upload a file. That'll have to be HTML or some sort of web code, right? So you'll need some way to generate that web code. Eventually, I'm sure people could develop drag and drop modules in the wallet, but that's something I'm not currently focused on. Okay. Does anybody else have any more questions, or anybody want to say anything before we wrap up? No? Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate you spending the time. Thank you for chiming in, Kendall, and giving everybody an update. We'll be sure to keep you guys.
No problem.
Yeah, we'll be sure to keep you guys up to date with how everything evolves with these new sets of betas. We're, like I said, we're shooting for a new release for you guys on Christmas, and but most likely, the worst case, most likely by the end of the year. But it's looking like we will be able to make Christmas, but just no promises there. We'll do our best to make that. But thank you, everybody. we'll plan on another AMA in 2 weeks. That will be early January, will it not? That's what? Thursday, the 22nd. Yeah, sometime early January. We can also break and do one sooner if you guys need. But yeah, thank you everybody for the support. Thank you for joining this AMA, and thank you for the questions. And we'll see you next time.